Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Lyrically, I'm untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600. Untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Punch to the Face Radio. I'm your host, Brandon Stubbs. Appreciate you joining me this evening. And yes, once again, I am now sick with yet another cold. So I do apologize if I sound horrible tonight. But I'm here for you, the people, because it's the people who bring the show the energy that we do have. Now, luckily for me, I won't have to do this alone. Adam Abramowitz of Saturday Night Boxing, also known as SN Boxing on Twitter, will be joining me momentarily. We got some technical difficulties we're working through, so we're going to see if Adam is able to join in and tag along and talk boxing with us here tonight, because we got a lot to talk about. Adam, you there? All right. It sounds like we're still having issues getting Adam aboard here, but he'll be joining us here in a few moments. So, needless to say, we'll be talking about Cotto's last fight, Sadam Ali, and him having his breakout win and how this is actually more of a bigger win for Golden Boy. Also talk about this weekend's fights, Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Vasyl Lomachenko. We also have Orlando Salido versus Miguel Roman. Tevin Farmer is going to challenge for his first world title this weekend. And Francisco Vargas, interesting story with him. He's going to be bouncing back from his first career loss. So we're going to see if Francisco, what version of Francisco Vargas we will see come this weekend. All right, I'm still having issues bringing Adam aboard. We see him coming on, but for whatever reason, the internet is not working. But hey, you gotta love the internet. Shout out to Al Gore. And as also, we'll talk a little Superfly was officially announced here this weekend. Tom Leffler teased on Twitter that he had a big announcement that would happen during this weekend's fight. Unfortunately, it was not the fight that we wanted to have announced, but it was a fight card that nevertheless, we're all going to look forward to Superfly, so we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But you can call in to be a part of the show at area code 929-477-3165. Adam, hopefully you can hear me. Still no Adam. So
I'm here, Brandon.
Yes, Adam Abramowitz is now in the building.
Yeah, I'm calling in through the phone, but it's okay.
Okay. Well, if you're calling in through the phone, I can actually hear you through the mic. So you actually have been picked up here on the phone. So yeah. So yeah, if you're calling in on the internet, I can hear you perfectly fine. We haven't actually answered the phone call yet. So sounds like our technical difficulties may have been fixed.
Well, I'm hearing you through the phone. My phone, not my computer.
All right. Well, nevertheless, Adam Abramowitz is here. Adam, man, I apologize about technology. It's fun timing. So we're going to bring you on here through the phone line. So, sorry, technology, it is what it is, man. But you're here, which is good.
All good.
All right, so I guess we'll
let me call right back in for the regular one and don't try and bring me into the computer. So let me call in through the phone line. Thanks, man.
All right. So as Adam is going to be calling back in here in a few moments, and he's going to be so let me just kind of start off this. So as Adam, I'll be dialing back in. Let me go ahead and start off here with this weekend's Miguel Cotto, Sadam Ali fight. Now, for me, everyone knows that if you've listened to the show, I am a huge Miguel Cotto fan. And I just thought this was going to be a slam dunk win for him here over the weekend. I thought Sadam Ali moving up in weight was going to be a non-factor. I thought Cotto was going to be able to beat him. Well, boy, was I ever wrong. We did know that Cotto ended up tearing his biceps at around the 7th round where he really slowed down. But he didn't want to use that as an excuse, so neither will I. Tip of the cap to Sadam Ali. And as far as this being Miguel Cotto's final go, it is. I take nothing away from Sadam Ali. He did his thing, and, kudos to Miguel. Miguel seemed to be at peace with his loss. So, Adam, I'm at peace with his loss as well. I am not sad. I am not bitter. I'm not angry. I am sad. I'm sad to see him go, but I'm not sad to see the way he went out because, like I said, he seemed to be at peace with it. What is your initial take when you saw the end of the fight and how it ended? Him saying hurt his arm, but he kept fighting. What was your initial reaction to the ending of the fight and Sadam Ali coming out being the winner?
Well, I'm also at peace with his loss. So that makes all of us. You know what? It was a much better fight than I anticipated. Credit to Sadam Ali. I mean, he was brought in to lose. Cotto had some very good rounds in the middle of the fight. He got hit a lot, though. I mean, even before the bicep injury, I mean, he was rocked very badly in the third round. And, it wasn't – Cotto's always gotten hit. It's not like he's this defensive master. But suddenly, I just didn't like how he was taking punches. Ali was, has moderate power, never thought of as a huge puncher. And, he rocked Cotto with both a left hook, a right uppercut, straight right hand. So I think all of those signs, when a guy who's 147 pounds is moving up, not thought to be a great fighter, when that guy can really do a lot of damage, I think Cotto is retiring at the right time. So, it was a good fight. I think fans got a good show. HBO put a really nice package together during the week regarding their retrospective, and even the night of, I thought they were I thought they did a really nice job of capturing the impact that Cotto had to so many boxing fans. So I hope he does retire. I hope Freddie Roach one day will admit that he loses a fight, because I was a little disappointed to hear him say that he thought Cotto won. I heard that Freddie Roach
will never admit that.
Yeah.
I heard that Freddie will never admit that.
Listen, Roach still believes that Pacquiao won Marquez 4. I don't know how. He still believes it, though.
He ain't getting up, Jim.
Yeah. So, you know what? It was a good night of. It was a good fight. You watch the fights because you don't always know what's going to happen, and he didn't go out he didn't embarrass himself, and that's what you didn't want to see. You didn't want to see the Bernard Hopkins scenario, getting punched out through the ropes. Cotto went out. He was in a close fight. It was a good fight. It's time to go, but he didn't. He didn't have that old man scenario where I think he could still hold his head up high as he leaves the ring.
So with that being stated, let's now go to the other side of things. Sadam Ali, his trainer, is it Andre Rozier? Or hopefully I got his name
correct.
Right. Yeah. He's already said that they're not sure they're going to stay at 154. They're kind of making that clear. They're going to go where the money's at, which is smart. But for Sadam Ali now, let's just call it what it is. He's now got a golden ticket, at least for his next fight, maybe even 2 fights, depending on how Golden Boy plays it. For him, what does this impact do for him going forward, especially in his next fight? And if you were advising him, would you say stay at 154, see if you can get a good fight there, or do you tell him to go back down to 147 and challenge in the welterweight division?
Well, I think this is when boxing politics matters a lot. Let's look at 154. The other titleists are Charlo, you have Hurd, and then you have Lara, and they're all with Heyman. So I don't see unification happening. His mandatory eventually will be Liam Smith, Beefy Smith, who fought Canelo, I believe, last year. That's a winnable fight for Ali. It's close to, it could be a close fight. Maybe that fight does decently in England, which is possible. If he drops down to 147, the titleists are Keith Thurman, who has 2 belts. Earl Spence has 1 belt. They are also with Heyman, who does not do work with Golden Boy. They just don't. And then the 4th belt is Jeff Horn. I doubt Bob Arum is going to give Ali that fight when he has Crawford, somebody who he really wants to give that belt to. So I guess if you're looking at politics, stay at 154 and fight your mandatory. I mean, maybe you go to England and make some decent money. You can win that fight and build something. I don't know. How do you look at it?
Well, a name that's been bounced around besides Liam Smith has been Kell Brook at 154. That's been something that has been bounced around and saying, could be a possibility for him. For Ali, I think, maybe staying at 154 may make the most sense because in this regards, he could be a big fish in a small pond on HBO because he could be a titleist at 154. This is like I said, Golden Boy was the big winner because now they have another quote-unquote star or somebody they're going to promote as a star on HBO that they can now get dates for and get money for. So from that aspect, I look for him to stay at 154. I think that actually the more fights he gets at 154, the stronger he'll be and the more confident he'll be, fighting at that weight. 147 is going to make really in both scenarios, 154 and 147, it's going to make little to no sense because he's not going to get many opportunities to unify any titles. But if the money's going to be there with HBO, you at least have maybe possibly two fights, Liam Smith and Kell Brook, that can be down the line at 154. Why not do those instead of going back down to welterweight where you're just another guy at 147? At least you have a title right now at 154, and you can try to milk that and can try to, build more of a resume off of that.
And sometimes it's like boxing just works in weird ways. It's like, Adonis Stevenson was a 168-pound fighter who had gotten knocked out once, and then, he jumped at an opportunity to fight Chad Dawson, sorry to upset you, and knocked him out. He was never thought of as a light heavyweight before that moment. Sometimes you just have to seize your opportunity. So Sadam Ali seized his opportunity. One thing I really want to talk about is how impressed I was with Andre Rozier. I thought he did a fantastic job in the corner, really telling it like it is to Sadam Ali, saying, you got this guy hurt, you're not following it up, you need to be more aggressive, you need to keep letting your hands go, you need to throw in combinations. I thought the way he, kept going at him, I thought the way he kept being aggressive and pushing him is exactly what a corner should do. And couple Rozier's performance in that fight with what he did with Danny Jacobs against Golovkin. Now, Jacobs lost a really close fight, but did so much better than anybody thought. He's had one hell of a year, Rozier, and I had never really thought a lot about him, honestly. Not thought of him. I never thought he was anything amazing. But I thought he really came into his own. He had some great moments in the corner, getting his fighters prepared, doing good work between rounds. This is not easy at all. And Rozier really impressed me, and I think this win is his as much as Ali's. He really goaded Ali to take it to that next level, and was very successful. And you have to love the fact that Ali was not intimidated. He walks into Madison Square Garden, everybody is there for the A side. He's the opponent. He didn't. Once Cotto had a good second round in particular, he didn't necessarily cower. He didn't retreat. He fought well. He was well prepared. So credit to Andre Rozier. They put a great game plan together, and the trainer really came through during that fight.
Now, obviously we're going to talk about this here in a couple of weeks when we do our year-end awards and talk about 2018, but would Rozier be a sleeper pick for, 2017 Trainer of the Year?
Yeah, I think he's in the conversation. The guy that I keep going back to is Derek James, who is the trainer for Earl Spence and Jermell Charlo. Thought he had a great year. But certainly, I think Andre Rozier has done a lot to raise his stock in the sport, and he has a lot of other fighters in the gym in Brooklyn. And I think he's with Darvanchenko, the middleweight, who's coming up. There's a number of the other Eastern European fighters who are kind of coming out of that gym. I've been very impressed this year, so he's definitely somebody in the conversation.
Absolutely, I definitely agree. I was impressed with the work they did. And like I said, man, kudos to Sadam Ali. So we're not going to kind of take it to another side of this, kind of put a closing cap on this. We had a lot of fighters turn down the Miguel Cotto fight. Do you think any of them right now are looking at what happened in the fight and how Sadam Ali did and saying, shit, that should have been me?
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I mean, Golden Boy, I'm sure, was negotiating, was making it tough for these fighters. I mean, there's a reason why some of these guys aren't with Golden Boy, and if one of the deal points was to get a 2 or 3 fight deal with Golden Boy, well, that certainly makes the equation different. Was there a one fight deal finally offered to Mikey Garcia? It's very possible. Was there a one fight deal eventually offered to Errol Spence? Maybe. It's tough to say. Yes, I think watching Cotto, I think many of those guys would have had success, but you have to get in the ring at a certain point, and there were reasons. The thing is this: you look at Golden Boy's stable, and let's say you beat Miguel Cotto at 154 if you're a PBC fighter, and now Golden Boy has options for the next 2 or 3 fights. Who are those fights they could even get for you? Do you know what I mean? What kind of fighters would you even fight if you win? And so I think that calculus really is getting lost a little bit. I want these guys to get in the ring, and I want them fighting big fights. But let's say Errol Spence wins at 154 and beats Cotto, and which is great for him. Then he does what? If Cotto is pulling the shot, if Golden Boy is pulling the shots, he does what? He's going to be on HBO. Is there some then rapprochement with the PBC guy? I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. It gets extremely complicated, and there's no clear path for other fighters. They were trying to offer Mikey Garcia a couple of other fighters, and I understand why they didn't make the deal. I wish one of them would have made the deal, but good for Sadam Ali, and he did do it. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean, you got to think those other guys would have done well, right?
Seeing the Cotto that we saw and seeing him kind of jump when he did get hit the way he got hit, it would have ended badly. It would have ended, similar to what happened with Bernard Hopkins and Joe Smith Jr. So from that aspect, I'm glad it didn't. As a Cotto fan, you don't want to see him go out and get physically hurt. Granted, he hurt his arm, but, you don't want to see him take, unnecessary shots to the head. So from that aspect, I'm glad it didn't, but it would have definitely propelled one of these guys from PBC to another plateau, because a lot of those guys are already stars in their own right, but it would have took him to maybe, possible superstardom. And like you said, what would have happened? If Errol Spence would have won, could they have worked out a deal and said, hey, you have a fight here at 154 or 147, we'll put it on HBO, Golden Boy will co-promote with PBC against another PBC fighter. Like you said, things can get a little weird that way, but I think it would have made a lot of people money, and it would have helped, really promote those guys and put them on another plateau that right now that momentum isn't really rolling for them with Al Haymon and PBC, which is just a strange brew over there. Now,
let me ask you a question. I wanted to ask you a question before we left Cotto. So let's have our favorite moment. Do you have a favorite Miguel Cotto fight or memory as he rides off into the sunset?
Weirdly enough, I've gotten to see him fight live several times, and he's lost all but one of them. I would say maybe the most memorable one, because it was such an odd fight, was the one he won. And that was him actually beating Delvin Rodriguez in his middleweight debut. It seemed so odd for him to move up in weight. It was just a fight that he was just overwhelmingly better than Delvin Rodriguez, and pretty much he ended Delvin Rodriguez's career as being a television fighter of any sorts. That was the one time I got to see him fight live and win. Beyond that, the other moments I will remember is, him giving, and me, I got a chance to see this live as well, him giving Floyd Mayweather fits in that fight.
Yeah.
Him not backing down and him not losing and getting knocked down to Canelo Alvarez. And I always will point to that fight when people say Canelo has such vicious power. He could knock down a much smaller guy. So I always point to that fight as being a very much a a defactor when people say Canelo has monster power. Not so much. And also was there when he fought Manny Pacquiao, and he tore up. So
yep.
One out of four isn't bad as far as wins go, but one thing I always remember is he just had tremendous heart. Never quit out there. Despite the Miguel, as we like to call him, he never quit. He tried his best. And he gave it his all. And like HBO said, and I'm not going to get choked up like Jim Lampley. You never felt cheated watching a Miguel Cotto fight. When you went to it live, when you ordered it on pay-per-view, you never felt cheated. Like, damn, he could have did more. You didn't feel that way. So, when things happened the way it did here on Saturday night, and he just didn't have enough left in the tank, he hurt his arm, I didn't feel bad because I looked at it like this. For the other years he entertained us, he was given that layup. He deserved it. I'm okay with him going out the way he did.
I wrote about this in an article last week before Cotto's last fight that my first live fight was a Cotto fight, and it was against Carlos Quintana in Atlantic City, and that was a double bill with Margarito and Josh Clottey, and I was given ringside seats as a birthday gift. And I had such a wonderful experience that night, just listening to the crowd, his fans, and this was Cotto on his rise too. I mean, his fans were behind him 100%. That's probably like that, and maybe like the Kelly Pavlik Jermaine Taylor fight were probably the two times I've heard that arena louder than any others. And what a place to see a fight, and Cotto was just so vicious with his left hook that night. He had such power. He was fighting for the title at 147, and Quintana was a decent fighter. He has some notable wins in his career. He beat Paul Williams, and he upset Joel Julio, and he made Quintana quit. I mean, he made him quit on his stool and with just some vicious body work. And he was a lot of fun, and that night was, I was definitely a big boxing fan before that fight, but that fight brought my love of the sport to a different level. It was just that sense of seeing a live fight, feeling the energy and the electricity. There is no live sport that I've ever seen that compares to boxing at that level. The intensity. I mean, I can only imagine what the energy must have been like for the like the Pacquiao-Cotto fight or something like that. I mean, the energy in these arenas are just crazy, and it's so exciting. And I still remember that 10 years later, 11 years later. So thank you, Miguel Cotto, for that one. How about that, Brandon? I bet you weren't expecting that.
I really wasn't. I thought you were going to completely shame me. But, we'll say this, right now Miguel Cotto's gone, and there is no Puerto Rican fighter for us to really get behind right now. So I strongly encourage him if, his next path is going to be with his family and really pushing Miguel Cotto Promotions is help find us some young Puerto Rican stars, because boxing will need that. We need that Puerto Rican-Mexico rivalry because it's great for the sport of boxing. So I trust in Miguel now to do that now in his second lifetime in boxing is now go out and find us some young stars on the island of Puerto Rico and bring them to the forefront for us fans to enjoy.
Well, let me give you an opportunity to shame me, because I don't want this to be one-way traffic. Last year, I delayed a vacation to watch Bernard Hopkins against Joe Smith. Okay, like he's 51. He was fighting, well past his prime. I literally said no. I was going with my girlfriend. We were going to go to the Caribbean. I said no. We're going to delay this vacation another day to see this fight. And then, he gets punched through the ropes. And because Hopkins was, for that guy, Hopkins was one of those guys for me who really helped bring me into the sport, and I learned so much about the sport from him. He was a guy that, before I wrote about the sport or followed it in another level, like Hopkins was one of those guys for me. And so although I did pick Smith to beat him, so I felt good about that. But I didn't feel good about seeing a 51-year-old, landing on his neck and his spine at the broadcast table. I mean, that was just awful.
Yeah. Yeah, not the way to go. The bright side is, for me, the guy who brought me into boxing is still actually boxing in Roy Jones Jr. So I
yes,
guess
he will never stop. He will never stop. He will keep going forever. I got to tell you something, though. You're not going to like what I'm about to say, but Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman were doing some horrible cheerleading during that broadcast early in the fight. It was until they realized that Ali was actually in the fight. And Roy Jones was the only one that's actually calling the fight. The other two were saying how, great Cotto looks and, Ali's just happy to be there. And, it was awful. And Roy Jones was like, damn, that was a good right hand. Cotto's hurt. And then suddenly Max and Jim were like, oh, maybe we should watch the fight. Maybe we should actually watch the fight. Something's happening here. And so, I love Roy Jones as a broadcaster, and he's so valuable right now to that team because they can get so caught up in their narrative and playing favorites. And he was really good on Saturday night. He's really good.
He really was. And, as much as we laugh at some of the times when he makes up words and just laughs at his own jokes, Roy does a fantastic job, and he does call it right down the middle and very unbiased. And I agree. I'm glad that he's there to kind of give it some balance. He tries his best to make it as balanced as possible. But, yeah, it was relatively obvious, probably around the fourth round that they were just completely homering Cotto, which and as a fan, I'm like, okay, but I'm not seeing this. I'm seeing very clearly like Ali's doing a good job. He's in there to fight. He's not there just to get a check. So I agree. HBO, you got to do better.
Yeah, and you know what? Everybody gets favorites, and you know what's fascinating is you go back 20 years and you watch Jim Lampley's calls of fights. I did this recently with I think I was watching James Toney and Iran Barkley, and fantastic fight. And they're just calling the fight. There's very little of the context and stories around it, and that really changed, I think, subtly over the years when I'm watching the broadcast now, and it's so much stuff that's brought out, outside of the ring. Maybe it's just from years of bad fights, or maybe it's a directive from the narrative, from the network. But, the way they call fights, and not just that network, other networks are like that too. Peter Nelson says, we love boxing because we're in the storytelling business. And I'm like, well, should it be in boxing because you love boxing? Shouldn't it be in boxing because it's a really entertaining, fantastic television sport? So I think there has been a subtle shift, and every now and then you see fights that skew way too much to that storytelling angle. And sometimes it's like, watch the fight, or, have the story, but the second the first punch is thrown, you got to be calling the fight. And it's a shame that I think the broadcasting at times gets away from that. So be it. It's a trend. It's probably not going away anytime soon. I just used to really prefer the other way.
Well, we'll actually get a treat this weekend. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a permanent thing or not, but as we shift gears and we talk about commentating, Teddy Atlas will not be a part of the broadcast team for Lomachenko Rigondeaux. He's going to be doing some features for him. I think he may be like in studio or how that's going to work. But as far as calling the color commentary, he's not going to be there. Now, yeah. I wonder if it has to do something with the last Top Rank card. We're hearing, was it Mark Friedel?
I bet you it does. Yeah, I bet you it does.
If anyone has not seen that broadcast, I strongly suggest see if it's on ESPN3. If it's something you can possibly look through on the ESPN mobile app, it is the most uncomfortable thing to watch. Teddy Atlas punk a grown man throughout the broadcast. And, Kriegel just really couldn't – he tried his best to defend himself, but Teddy was just honoring him in a bad mood. It was something about that night that just didn't sit well with Teddy. But we won't have him talking and ruining Rigondeaux, Lomachenko here this Saturday. Now, finally, this fight is going to happen after Rigondeaux's Twitter handler, not Rigondeaux, trust me, you can't speak that good of English. They finally talked themselves into this big fight. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm still surprised it's even happening. But now that it's so close, I don't know. What are your opening impressions of the fight, coming out here Saturday night up in New York City?
Yeah, You know, I've seen the gamut. I mean, for some people, this is the fight they're most excited about in boxing. This is one of the top 2 or 3 fights that could possibly be made in the sport. To other people say that this fight is a blatant mismatch because Rigondeaux fights at 122 and Lomachenko is at 130, and there's a big weight disadvantage and all that stuff. I'm in the middle, where I'm happy this fight is being made. I think it has captured the imagination of the boxing public. I'm really glad that it's good it's going to be in New York. I think it's a good fight. I don't think it's a great fight because, let's face it, the next great Rigondeaux fight will be his first great Rigondeaux fight. Do you know what I mean? The guy is not a fun fighter to watch. So it might be interesting. I like technical fights sometimes. I mean, there is a point where a guy has to throw. I think it could be a decent fight. I'm hoping Lomachenko makes Rigondeaux up his punch volume. So I'm in the middle. It is not a holy grail fight for me. If I would have been there if I am going away next week, so I couldn't do it. But it's a good fight. I don't think it's a great fight.
I'm kind of in between because part of me really thinks that these two could bring out the best in each other. Part of me wants to think that Guillermo Rigondeaux knows that he has this stigma about him, about being a boring fighter and just being more of a technical fighter, and this is going to be literally his last chance on a grand stage to shut everyone up, that he's going to dare to be great and take chances. But then there's the realistic part of me that says this is going to be aesthetically horrible to watch. And I fear that that's going to be the case. Luckily, we have an HBO card, which we'll talk about in a few moments as well, that if it is bad, then we can flip the channel. But you just have to wonder, how is it going to be a technical fight, or are these two going to go out and brawl? The big thing I kind of wonder is with Guillermo Rigondeaux, he's moving up 8 pounds in weight. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be as big of a deal, but he's going to go in being naturally the smaller guy. And we've seen that he can be a little bit chinny, so which makes me wonder, Lomachenko's very accurate and he has some pop behind those punches. What happens when Rigondeaux does get knocked out or he does eat some power? How is he going to react? And I think that's going to be something that's maybe really interesting to watch come Saturday night is once he gets hit one of those first power shots, is he going to be able to withstand it? And if he does, how does he come back and react to that?
That's a great point. And, what's fascinating about Rigondeaux is he's gotten dropped against lesser fighters. But the one fight where he fought legitimate pound-for-pound guy was Nonito Donaire, and that was Rigondeaux at one of his best moments of his professional career. I mean, he dominated that fight. He out-threw Donaire. He dominated that fight. I mean, I didn't think it was wonderful to watch, but I think Rigondeaux did show what he's capable of, which is here's a guy who's one of the 4 or 5 best fighters in the world, and I'm going to go win 9 rounds on him, or I'm going to win 10 rounds on him. And so we don't know what to expect. We've seen him getting dropped against lesser fighters. We've seen him get hurt against lesser fighters. He struggled against Cordoba a long time ago. He's also had these really exciting one-round knockouts. You just don't know what to expect, and that is part of the X factor. So before I completely say, this fight is going to be awful, not every Rigo fight has been awful. A lot of it will depend on Lomachenko, and a lot of it, I think, will depend on if Rigondeaux feels, comfortable taking chances. I think the one thing that might play out the fans' favor here is that I don't think Lomachenko is a huge puncher. I think he's accurate and he hurts guys by landing so accurately. But he's not, except for that Martinez knockout, he's not normally the one-punch guy. So that might give Rigondeaux an opportunity to be less cautious, thinking that one, shot isn't going to get him. You also have to look at the punches that have dropped Rigondeaux. They've been long, straight right hands from orthodox fighters, and they've been the left hook from Dodner. Now, Lomachenko is a southpaw. He doesn't, we don't know how Rigondeaux is going to take those shots. So, it's usually been the straight right hand that's given him a trouble, especially from taller, rangier fighters. Well, that's not a punch Lomachenko will throw. So if that's his kryptonite, Loma may not have that. So it could go a number of ways. I could see Rigondeaux dancing a lot. I could see Lomachenko taking a few rounds to get his way into the fight. Who knows? Maybe Lomachenko lands that massive left hand early and hurts Lomachenko. We've seen him hit people with one punch so hard. People are like, well, the weight difference is so much. But you and I both know, you land the perfect shot. He has enough power. I'm sure he has enough power to hurt Lomachenko.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the key is, can he, he's broken a guy's jaw. I think it was Dickens when he went over there to the UK, he broke his jaw. He's capable of landing, power shots and massive bombs, but he just doesn't do enough of it. He doesn't mix enough of that in with this technical boxing that makes him so aesthetically pleasing to watch. Now, I guess we do have a caller who wants to chime in about this. So, do we want to give our official pick here in regards to this, or? Well,
let's let's bring in the callers and let's hear what they have to say. We'll give our picks at the end of the segment.
All right. So, caller, you're live here on Punch in the Face Radio.
Yeah.
Are you there? What's up? We can hear you. You live on air.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I kind of picked that Cotto Ali, right? I do several podcasts on YouTube and things like that. I just kind of knew, the old man going out. A lot of time it don't go their way. But Bernard Hopkins as of late. Now Cotto, Pacquiao as well. I picked Jeff Horn as well. I picked Joe Smith as well. These old dudes, in the words of Tank Davis, they need to sit down. At some point, sit down. Don't cherry pick and try to ruin your legacy because cherry picks are going wrong as of late. Too bad about the bicep. Something tells me if he would have won, he was going to find a way to keep fighting. But that bicep set him back. That was ugly. Sadam Ali looked all right defensively at times, and his power carrying up, that was funny. Cotto got a shocker. He wasn't prepared for that. Lomachenko.
So do you think? Let me ask you a question. Do you think at 37, Rigondeaux is too old? Do you think he's one of those old guys?
Yeah, and he's making it even worse, putting eight extra pounds on. I also want to get to that. I watched his media workout, and some people say he looks sharp. I was looking, and I'm saying, now maybe it's the heavier gloves that they use, but I don't know what ounce he was using. I don't know. When I seen him fight at 122 the last time, I couldn't see the man's punches. I couldn't see what he was hitting. I couldn't tell if he landed. He was too quick. He was too sharp. At the way he's at today, he looks blocky. He looks slow. I could see the shots. I could see him falling and stumbling over his trainer at times, and I'm just like, they trying to sell me the best of Guillermo Rigondeaux, and I think this is a barbarian. This is a barbarian party. I think he does this for Lomachenko. I go back to the example where when Nicholas Walters was going up to 130 pounds, the first person they were negotiating with was the rightful number one guy, Uchiyama, right away. But when it was Lomachenko, the first guy they were negotiating with was Roman Martinez off a loss. I just feel like they, the first time they negotiated with Rigondeaux, 126, it was an if you beat me contract situation. I think they do this for him, and I hate these kind of fights, but I wanted to call in and voice. I'm calling in everywhere I can, voice my displeasure for these kind of fights because in Lomachenko's division, there's been Uchiyama was the number one man. Corrales beat him. Now Corrales has been beat. That number one man has been beat 3 times over. The respect for number one man has been beaten 3 times over, and Lomachenko isn't the guy to put his hands on him either time. And I like to use the TBR BR rankings. I think that's how it's pronounced. I actually
I'm a Transnational Boxing Rankings Board. I'm a member of that. Yeah, and Brandon is too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now an issue I have with what they done. Lomachenko was rated number 4 and he skipped from number 4 to number 1 after beating Walters. Walters was not ranked at all. Wasn't ranked in the top 10 there at all when they fought. But the 3 guys that he jumped over were Francisco Vargas, Orlando Salido, who he lost to, and Jezreel Corrales. All three of them recently have been in the ring. Corrales had knocked out Uchiyama, number 1 man. He dropped under Lomachenko after that fight. After Lomachenko stopped an unranked guy, you had the 2 before him, Francisco Vargas and Salido. They dropped after they had just drew with each other in a beautiful fight. I'm just like, yo, this guy gets more gifts than people seem to realize.
Listen,
it's like, yo,
let me shed a little light on that. And you know, as part of a transnational boxing rankings board, there is a collection of about 30 people that every week vote for rankings changes. And, you know, we wind up with it's a democratic process. And as a democracy, sometimes you get overruled. So I will say that the majority of people thought Lomachenko, not that I want to get into a big ratings debate, but I'll say this. I hear what you're saying. I would have probably agreed with you. The board thought otherwise. And in a larger point, there are people who have Lomachenko ranked number 1 for the best fighter in the sport. You know, I'm always been about, well, who has he beaten yet? But other people look at it like, well, my eyes tell me he's the best guy. And I'll tell you, and I respond, well, your eyes tell you that because who's he beaten? You know, it's a little bit of chicken and the egg, but I can only go off of how is he doing off of big fights and big opponents. And he hasn't had the guys yet. So, listen, if he runs through Rigondeaux and destroys him, I do think that means – I think that's meaningful. I think if you – because nobody has been able to do that. And Rigondeaux is so he's been so well instructed defensively. I mean, he makes mistakes occasionally, but I'm saying he's so defensively minded that if you can dominate him, I do think that means something. I really do. So I'm not going to tell you I'm going to move him up here or here or here. I think it's a good win for Lomachenko, but I also hear what you're saying that a lot of people either that represent Lomachenko or media have been very, very quick to be on his bandwagon. He is an exceptional talent, but let's wait till he beats guys. That's what I've always said. But thank you for calling in. Yeah, well, thank you for calling in. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being stated, you know, let's go ahead and we get into our official picks, because then I want to go to HBO's card, because these two paths could cross.
Yeah.
I like Lomachenko to win. I'm going to pick him the unanimous decision. I think we're going to get 12 rounds of okay action, because it's really going to depend on how aggressive Rigondeaux wants to be and if he's going to dare to take chances. If he takes chances, I think we're going to get a hell of a lot better fight than what could be, but I really think we're going to get somewhat of a stinker. Lomachenko, unanimous decision. But Guillermo will not make – I don't think he's going to look old. Now, I will say this. Something that did kind of piss me off a little bit about Rigondeaux is that he decided to dip out and not do his media obligations with ESPN. This is a prime example of him saying, you know, I don't get the attention and respect I deserve. And then you do something like that. That was really dumb, because that could really help your brand, win or lose, especially if you're to lose a close fight and put on an entertaining show. You know, you never know what ESPN may do with you. They may want you back. Rock Nation doesn't have a television deal, but
he's done this his whole career.
It's just so, I hate when people do that. Don't dip out on your media obligations. The media is who helps make you money and helps make you a star. Don't do it. So I had to get on that soapbox about that. But Lomachenko, unanimous decision. Lomo will he'll keep his place amongst the top 10 pound-for-pound fighters in the world.
You know, Rigondeaux's been doing this his whole career, hasn't he? I mean, he used to say he needed 6 months in advance for a fight with HBO. You know, he's signed with 3 or 4 different promoters at times. Anyway, frustrating. I agree with you. That's a very good point. I see it very similarly. unanimous decision, Lomachenko. But here's the thing. I think he wins this fight really on punch volume. And that's not exciting, right? That's sexy. Like, oh, my God, Lomachenko threw more punches and he won. I don't think people are going to say Lomachenko is so amazing. I think he's going to be frustrated finding range. I think he's not going to land a lot of really clean shots, but I think his offense will help neutralize Lomachenko's offense. So I think he wins a fairly comfortable, like maybe 9-3, 10-2 type of fight, but it's really going to be on punch volume. But so be it. You know, you can only beat the guy in front of you. Nobody's saying, well, that Rigondeaux is just there and you can just light his ass up. I mean, he's going to have to earn it. And Rigondeaux's a proud fighter. I expect there'll be some fouling. I expect Rigondeaux to learn some of the lessons of the Salido fight. I think we will see some. And let's get this straight. Rigondeaux's a cheap fighter, right? He's a dirty fighter. He is. Nobody likes to talk about it because, like, he's this, aesthetic marvel, the way he moves. He's also dirty. He does rabbit punching. He holds and hits. He uses his forearm illegally. Like, he does all these tricks. I think those tricks will be brought out. I think they were going to be used to stop the flow of the fight, to thwart Lomachenko's aggression. So I think it's going to be a not that great of a fight. And we'll learn a lot about both fighters. I just think Lomachenko is a little too fresh and a little more offensively minded, and I think he wins.
Now, also,
is there anything? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was about to say the same thing. Is there anything else on the card? Yep.
That's worth watching. Well, on the television portion, we're going to get Shakur Stevens and Michael Conlan, but they're going to be in separate fights. Shakur Stevens, someone we thought we were going to go to the show this week. Never heard back from his media people. I've already gotten on soapbox about that. I'm not going to get on it again. But you'll get to see those two Olympians fight in separate bouts. Top rank, we know that that's something they're going to be pushing for down the line. At some juncture, these guys' careers, since they promote both of them, they're putting them both on TV. These guys have a combined record of 7-0. Not sure if I really want those guys on television, but I get it. I understand why they're doing it. Bryant Jennings is going to be facing Donald Hainsworth in a heavyweight bout. Bryant Jennings is someone that Top Rank also is promoting, and he's just kind of waiting in the wings. He could be a fallback guy for Joseph Parker if things don't go the way Joseph Parker wants to go, negotiating with Anthony Joshua, since Top Rank has a piece of him as well. So I know a lot of the undercard fights you'll be able to watch on ESPN3. They also have a women's bout as well that they'll be featuring on ESPN3. So if you have the ESPN app, definitely watch all the action before you get to the main card that will air on ESPN, which will not be delayed this time because we won't have any live sports. So we'll just have the Heisman Trophy ceremony before the fight starts. So as long as no one has an extra long speech, everything should start on time. With that being stated, we remember an extra long speech.
Yeah, you do remember that Hall of Fame night with Pacquiao and the NFL Hall of Fame where I think Jerry Jones chose to speak for about 55 minutes. So you never know. I mean, it is ESPN, right? I feel like they have to. They might just delay it on principle. It might be ready to go at 9 o'clock, and then they just be like, you know what, we cannot have boxing fans expecting us to start something on time. Like, we don't want to give them an expectation they'll want it again for the future. So they may wind up delaying it for all we know. I mean,
just out of spite.
They might do it. Burke Magnus, that's the guy who's in charge of programming for ESPN again. And the reason why I brought that up because how much fun is it to say Burke Magnus? So he is in charge of that. And so at a certain point in time, he may eventually be like, hey, we have boxing. We're allowed to actually show that, live. By the way, Christina Poncher, who works for Top Rank and does a lot of the international feeds, told me that Bryant Jennings is not going to be on the TV portion. It's going to be Conlan, Shakur Stevenson, one of their other prospects. Diaz is going to be on it as well. So I think Stevenson is going to be on the Top Rank live portion. I think they're going to be streaming their cards. Anyway, not that really matters.
So anyway, I do want to say, since you dropped her, she does a great job. I want to point that out. She does a phenomenal job commentating those fights.
She really does. And she's I met her a few times in person, dining with her before Calm down, everybody. She's just platonic, but it was. She does a great job. She's eager. One of the things is she's very eager to learn about the sport, and she does her homework. So she's good. And I tweeted this out today. Like, would it have killed Top Rank to put a second fight that was competitive on the card? I'm okay with the prospect matchups of Conlon and Stevenson and Diaz. Like, I think you could have had maybe two of them or one of them. I get it. Like, it's a national audience. You want to build buzzes for these guys coming up. And Stevenson is from Newark, originally. It's right across the bridge. I get him being on that card. But would it have killed him? Because this is the thing. You're going to have 3 fights. Not that they're going to be long. They're prospect fights. They're going to be 4 rounds or 6 rounds, maybe less. But that's a lot of time for fans to join in from 9 o'clock to when the main event starts, which might be, 10:30, 10:45. So they're not going to see competitive boxing most likely for an hour and 30 minutes, hour and 45 minutes. Do you think that was a good move by Top Rank?
I get it because they do want to definitely push the product to this, Conlon and Shakur Stevens. I get the narrative there, but I don't know how much of that is their picking and how much of that is maybe ESPN's doing, because they see these two guys as being possible stars. They're seeing Conlon as being, maybe the I hate to say this, use as an example, but maybe the boxing version of Conor McGregor, the brash Irishman that may be able to, be a face of the sport in a couple of years. So maybe they want to get them behind that bandwagon and get behind that energy. Possible. But I really do think they could have found, another more of an interesting co-main event to have, something more meaningful than the fights they'd have. But I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. It's one of those things we kind of have to accept. We're finally getting Lomachenko and Rigondeaux. Okay, that's all we're going to get. You're not going to get any sort of dessert to go with the meal. You're going to get the main course. You're going to shut up and you're going to enjoy it. So I guess that's kind of where we're at with this one.
That's right. There's no shrimp cocktail appetizers. There's no foie gras.
No.
You're just getting the dessert. You're just getting the meal.
Literally, but the bright side about this is on HBO. There's a card going on at I don't want to say the exact same time because I'd have to look at my guide, but they will cross-sect. We have Orlando Salido, Miguel Roman. No way in the world this fight sucks. It just can't. If it does,
awesome.
something's wrong. Orlando Salido, he brings the violence. Miguel Roman, in the same respect, can do the same. I'm highly interested in this one because it's just a fan-friendly fight. That's all it is. It really has no significance in regards to titles or rankings or anything like that. This is just two guys who want to fight, and I'm going to watch them.
Yeah, they're going to beat the fuck out of each other. I mean, it's going to be bloody. Like, the only way this fight could be bad is if, like, a head clash, which is very possible, or like, something happens like that. That certainly is the case. This is going to be a fun fight. Roman showed earlier in this year against that fantastic fight against Takashi Miura. Boy, that was a fun fight. I think that was in January. And that was a bloody battle. That was a lot of fun. Salido is one of these guys who can look very good, and he can also get knocked down a lot against lesser fighters. So who knows? They both have a lot of power. I think Roman has even the better knockout percentage in terms of KO rate. They're both going to be bringing it. I love the fight. I think, it's a little bit strange that this is the main event. I think there was about 2 or 3 other fights that they wanted for Salido. They wanted the Burchell to come back on. But it's a good main event. The other fights on the card are Tevin Farmer, who's from Philadelphia. He's a slick boxer. He's going to be fighting Kenichi Ogawa for a vacant title. Nobody's really seen Ogawa. I talked to Lou DiBella, who promotes Tevin Farmer, and he said that he's moderately worried about Ogawa because Ogawa can definitely put punches together and how to fight. Nevertheless, Farmer is a very big favorite from the bookies. That might mean something, that might not. A lot of times the people from that are not seen, or, bookies do not give them a lot of respect. And also bookies reflect betting action. Also on that card is Francisco Vargas, who has recently won 2 Fight of the Year awards. He got beat earlier this year by Burchelt. He's coming back against Stephen Smith, who is a British fighter and who has lost to Sniper Pedraza and Jason Sosa. Smith is a definition of B fighter. He's credible against lesser guys. If you're good, you should beat him. If Vargas is healthy and in shape, he should win. But he's had some massive, vicious fights. He's taken some huge shots. So I think it's fair to say that there's some drama in that fight, because nobody knows what kind of Vargas. I mean, he had 3 punishing fights back to back to back. I mean, you don't know how somebody is going to recover. So I am moderately interested in that. We'll see. What are your thoughts on some of the other fights on that HBO card?
Shout out to Tom Leffler, who tweeted me last night. You also have Dennis Shavakov on the card that they're really excited about. Honestly, I'm happy for, and I do want to see how he performs on the platform of HBO. Is Tevin Farmer. The guy's had a very heroic and weird year this year, so it's glad that he's going to have an opportunity to close out the year, possibly being a champion. I mean, the guy got shot in his hand 6 months ago, and was kind of wondering if he'd ever be able to box again. And here he is fighting for his first world title. Had a rocky beginning of his career, but he's put it together and put up a great stretch. Has deserved and earned his way into this title fight. Not to mention, obviously, if he wins, this could set up something really big for him in 2018 and Gervonta Davis, which Gervonta's a different character. That's Broner 2.0, but whatever. But that could potentially set up something big and maybe a big payday and a good springboard for both those gentlemen in 2018 if Tevin Farmer is able to be successful here this weekend. But like I said, I think Shavakov is someone is. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's really interesting that Tevin Farmer is on the same card as Salido, because I think they're both guys. If you look at their records, the record doesn't tell a story of Salido. Salido has 12 losses or something, and you look at the record, the guy, you're like, oh my God, why are they putting in 12? I mean, we all know what Salido is, right? We know he's one of the best TV fighters of this era. You match him remotely decently, he's going to make a fight of it. You match him against the really top guys, he's going to struggle. But he still beat Lomachenko. He knocked down the Gamboas of the world. Like, he still brings it, and he's had some good wins. Farmer, I think, started off, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he 9-5-1 or something like that, or 9-4-1 in his career? Isn't that right? He had a lot of.
He lost his first 2 out of 4. Won a couple, and then had another stretch where he lost 2 out of 5, and then I think he's currently now a 12 or 16 fight win streak, something to that degree. He's just really put it together. I mean, he's one of those. You got to say with young fighters, he learned. He picked up the game, he learned his holes, and he fixed them.
I had a chance to interview him a couple years ago. This is before he was doing a Stay Busy fight in Philadelphia, and as you pointed out correctly, he had a tough time getting network support. He's an African-American fighter who's extremely defensive-minded sometimes. He's cross-eyed. He doesn't have a big fan base. He's not a big puncher. Nobody was just lining up to sign him. There was no let's Tevin Farmer, we have to sign this guy. He already had 4 or 5 losses. He earned this. And I asked him, what was the change? And he lost his, I think after his last loss, and it was either his 4th or 5th loss of his career, he said, I finally decided to take boxing seriously. And it was crazy. I mean, how you hear boxers say that all the time. This time I'm going to focus differently. This time I'm in camp. This time in shape. This time blah, blah, blah. This time. And, and you look at Tevin Farmer's record, and you're like, the guy already has 4 or 5 losses. How good he could be. I'm telling you, he's a very good fighter. he's an extremely good defensive fighter. I mean, he's a student of the sport. He knows angles. He moves very well. He's also in the same stable as Jason Sosa, and they spar all the time. And they give each other some really good work. And so props to Tevin Farmer because nothing was earned. And also prop to Lou DiBella on this. DiBella signed him. They thought they were going to get him to go to Al Heyman and PBC. That didn't work out. If you notice, this is Lou's first fight on HBO in years. Okay, there was some acrimony there. And so Lou went to the mat for Tevin Farmer. He kept on bugging HBO enough, and they said, all right, we'll get Tevin Farmer on HBO. So props to him, props to Tevin Farmer. I hope he puts forth a good effort, but win or lose, at least he gets this opportunity. So I'll be looking forward to that.
So it should be a very entertaining card from top to bottom. I also have a women's bout as well. Samil, I know I'm going to misenunciate this, and I've interviewed her before. Samil Jabirin, I probably butchered it. Close enough. She's actually a Mexican-American fighter. She's 6-0, fights in the flyweight division. Hell of a fighter. I've interviewed her before. Great lady, great personality. I don't know if you'll be able to stream any of the undercard fights. Hopefully you can somehow. If you can, do it legally. And also watch some of these unaired bouts. Now, with that being stated, if Orlando Salido is successful on HBO Saturday night, and we think Lomachenko's going to be successful on ESPN Saturday night, will we ever get this rematch in 2018?
Yes, I think so. Because Salido is just going to get older, right? I think eventually, I think the caller made a decent point. I won't say Lomachenko's been protected, but you could tell he's a favorite at Top Rank. And, maybe they're putting him with Rigondeaux because they see it as less risky than they did a year or two ago. And maybe next year, if Salido can somehow win, they'll think Salido's just a little less risky too. Now, to be fair, they've offered Salido some really good deals. Salido's turned down. I've read $400,000 in one offer. I've read $750,000 another time. So it's not like Top Rank hasn't tried. They haven't given him the offer that he can't refuse. But to be fair, Lomachenko isn't making that kind of money either. It's not like Lomachenko's getting $4 million a fight or $3 million a fight. So I do think it happens. How about you?
I hope it does and I really think it's going to be one of those that Lomachenko's going to push Top Rank to possibly make the fight happen for the simple fact of I think he wants to erase that loss mentally from people's mind frame because that is his only blemish. I think that was maybe a fight he wasn't prepared for because he's an Olympian and Salido at that time was just too much of a veteran fighter and used veteran tactics, if you will, to get that to get that W. So I think it'll happen. I think that's something Lomachenko is going to push for, and I think it makes the most sense. I think it's a fight that fans would want to see again to see if Salido could pull it off again. And, they want to see if Lomachenko can make any adjustments from that first bout out. But it's funny.
Can I tell you something that go ahead.
And I was going to say, the funny thing is, the caller's saying, people getting old. Miguel Cotto's 37. Salido's 37. You kind of got to wonder, is he going to get old overnight? So, him winning Saturday night is no slam dunk.
That's what I was just about to say. I might be going the upset pick here. I'm on the fence, and the more I look at this fight, I think this has trap fight all over it for Salido. I know it's a Mexican rivalry fight, so I think he'll be up for that. But the thing is, you watch Salido, and he's been knocked down multiple times against guys we have never heard of before. He's fighting in Mexico. He's fighting a guy named Wayne Henga, and he gets knocked down twice. He's fighting other guys, and it's just he has nights. The two Rocky Martinez fights. The first fight he didn't have his legs. He got dropped, and he didn't look good, and he rallied back. The second fight he had his legs and looked a lot better. at this point of his career, and now Mickey Roman is no spring chicken either. I mean, these guys have both had well over 50 fights each. You know what, though? I keep thinking, man, Salido is just going to be thinking ahead in this fight, and, he seems to perform best against better fighters. I swear, I mean, he doesn't have the one-punch power, really. I think Roman may have a really good shot here. I really do. I don't know if I'm ready to pick it yet. Maybe by Friday I'm going to feel differently, but I'm telling you, I think Roman's really live in this fight.
I agree. I don't think it's going to be, somebody dominating anyone else. I think it's going to be actually a close competitive war. I think both guys are going to drop. I'm going to give the edge to Salido just because he's been in so many of these. But, that's also something to pick against him because he's been in so many of these. And eventually, every great warrior, they fall. And we see it happening. You can't get old overnight. And these type of fights, and, we said the same thing with Francisco Vargas, who'll be on the card. You have to wonder how much of a toll these physical, brutal fights take out of you. Win or lose this weekend, Salido's still going to be one of my favorites. He sent Juan Manuel Lopez to hell twice. And for that, I mean, all I can do is thank you.
What's interesting? I saw that, speaking of the 130-pound division, which HBO is very interested in, Burchelt, who beat Vargas earlier in the year, I saw they wanted him to come back this year for December. He had a hand injury. He wasn't able to do it. I noticed that today they announced he's going to fight his next title pretty much in Mexico. And I think that's smart. I think what they're trying to do is to sustain him a little bit, because everybody saw what happened to Francisco Vargas. He was in back-to-back huge fights, and it's just at a certain point in time, you can only bad things can happen. So I think they're going to be trying to draw out Burchelt's career. He had a great start of 2017. He had 2 very good victories. But I think they're gonna ease him back in, which is smart. I'm fine with that. These guys, he hasn't made real money yet, and they're trying to make a career out of him. So I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see because I know with Vargas, someone had said, and I wish I could remember what fighter it was, but they had said, or it was a trainer saying that Golden Boy was, using him too much and overexposing him and shortening his life and his career. So, if people can do that and kind of spread these fighters out a little bit thinner when they've been in wars, not inactive fighters, not PBC style fighters who just start fighting not to fight, but when they've been in wars, they need time to rest. I mean, it's obvious, and I'm glad it's now been 11 months for Vargas in between fights. So kudos to him. I hope he looks great here Saturday night. But I think as a whole, like I said, if ESPN's card, doesn't deliver or you get bored watching that, HBO has something for you. So I think it's a good weekend to have, to sit and watch boxing. We have a lot of various styles, so there should be something for everyone to sit back and enjoy and watch on TV. Now,
there's another.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I said there's another card I want to talk about for. Go ahead.
No, for Friday. Oh, wow, yeah. Because are we going to talk about Chad Dawson not being on the card for Fox?
No, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to give. I know that was a very sad moment for you when he was pulled off last week. There was one other person on Twitter I immediately to, which is Nat Stay Cool Wheels. I immediately offered him condolences as well.
Stay Cool.
But the main event of that fight, I think, is a little bit interesting, which is LB Ali, who is the light heavyweight power puncher from Egypt, lives in Florida, families from Egypt, and he's fighting the guy who once was known as Juan Pascal, or Jean Pascal, sorry. And Pascal, we all know he was a champion at one point. You'd think whatever life he had got pounded out of him in the 2 Kovalev fights. But we don't know. LB Ali has never been in with anybody real, and Pascal in his day used to have a great chin. And Pascal's also sneaky. Those 10 times around where he actually moves his hands, he throws some really untraditional punches. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to see it live. I'm probably going to tape it. But I think it could be a moderately interesting main event. Just to see LBI's had some like really fun first round knockouts against lesser guys. So, it's for what it is, an FS1 card. That's not a bad main event.
Well, and I don't know if you realize this or not, but John Pascal has said this is going to be his last fight. So this is going to be his retirement fight. So, yeah, he had said that this was going to be it. So, and I think he just announced that here late last weekend or early this week that he's done. This is going to be the last fight. So, we've seen this literally last weekend when you're already saying you're going to retire, you have a foot out the ring, you kind of wonder what kind of mental shape he's going to be in, and then what physical shape he's going to be in. I think Pascal has never been a guy who's cheated us in ring. I think he's given the maximum effort he can give, given his talent and his ability. So I think he's never cheated us. But what is he going to do here for this last fight? And if this is going to be his last go, and you kind of got to wonder what kind of investment PBC has in Ahmed, because if Pascal beats him, Pascal in this last fight is like beating up one of the guys they have invested in the 175-pound division, which is very weird. It's very, very weird how this could play out come Friday night. But nevertheless, I will watch because I'm a derelict. Well, actually, I won't watch. I'll be covering MMA. I will DVR and I will watch when I get home.
Yeah.
But it's something interesting to see because I want to see what Pascal has left, and much respect to him. He's been a entertaining fighter, if you will. I don't know if he's working with Roy Jones Jr. this fight or not. That should be odd if he is. But it's weird. It's also weird if this is his last fight and Jones somehow is training him or helping him at all. Think about how many guys Roy has worked with who they're now done or not irrelevant anymore, and Roy's still an active fighter. Roy's career started and is not even finished while some of these guys' careers, are in between. Very odd. Very odd.
Well, I mean, that doesn't speak – that really just speaks to how stubborn Roy Jones is. I mean, it's not like he's particularly relevant in boxing as an active fighter. I mean, he should have been done 10, 12 years ago. But, I mean, anybody, I guess, could fight until they're however old they are. Apparently Roy likes it, and so be it. I have, I was talking to someone who knew Roy Jones very well, and, everybody tried to convince Roy Jones to stop. Everybody's told him. I mean, he's heard from everybody. And the guy who used to be friends with him and no longer is that close, but no animosity, said, listen, as long as Roy's fighting, these lesser guys, and he loves it so much, like they've come to peace with it. They've come to terms. And I guess if he's fighting the C and D guys that he could beat and, show up for 3 rounds or 4 rounds and draw 2,000 people to Dover, Delaware, and, wherever, so be it. I mean, I don't want anything bad to happen to him. He's taken a lot of shots, but what can you do? The man is his own, as long as he could beat people, it's not like you say you can't sanction him. So it's a shame, but, he's going to keep going. He will keep going.
Yeah, it's weird. Now, speaking of weird, also here on this card here on Friday from Fox Sports 1 from PBC is Luis Ortiz.
Yeah.
Literally this week, it was Monday that he was kind of made free and clear from WBC, and he's also now got a fight booked literally the same day. Strange how all this is playing out, but I guess good for him. I don't even know which direction to go with this because it seems like it's just kind of dumped on us all of a sudden. Like WBC says, yeah, this was maybe we shouldn't have suspended him. Maybe things shouldn't have played out the way they did. He's good again, and now all of a sudden PBC's got him a fight like literally within hours.
Yeah, it smells, right? Because let's go over the timeline. So Ortiz is fighting on Eddie Hearn undercards, doing nothing. We think, okay, Eddie Hearn is going to be bringing Ortiz as a possible opponent for Joshua. This makes sense. That turns out not to be the case. He gets signed by Al Heyman. He gives a Wilder fight. He immediately fails a test. They launch an appeal. He doesn't fight Wilder. Somehow, even though he failed to disclose medicine and the WBA suspended him, The WBC decided not to suspend him. WBC is very friendly with the PBC, by the way. And so then he immediately gets reinstated and then is given a PBC fight. So you would think if the PBC was so angry with Luis Ortiz for failing a drug test, if they were so angry on the opportunity wasted for Deontay Wilder, that they would say, "The hell with you." But they didn't say that, did they? And that leads me to believe, well, that's really interesting. Now, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that said that Ortiz was paid off. You know, this whole thing by Wilder was a con job. It was they were taking care of him. They probably paid Ortiz on the side to step aside. You lose your place in line as a top contender, blah, blah, blah. It is interesting, though. I cannot make heads or tails of it. I do know that WC in particular, when they suspend a fighter, they want the other sanctioning organizations to recognize that. So they're not doing that in this scenario. They are removing the suspension, even though the WBA still has them suspended. So I find this very strange. I don't know what to make of it either, but I think it smells. I think there's a level of boxing that even though we follow the sport closely from the outside, we don't know what the hell is going on sometimes. And I can tell you that it's not good. This is just one of those scenarios where this isn't good.
Yeah, something's not adding up here, which makes me kind of wonder because, let's face it, Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua are not going to be facing each other in their next fights. I'm almost willing to bet the house on that one. If they're going to revisit the issue with Ortiz and Wilder at some juncture in 2018, since he will pretty much be back in place as being the number one contender, be the WBC. I don't know how that'll all work out. If Deontay Wilder wants any parts of that, or if he just wants to move on totally. I don't know.
But isn't it weird that the PBC is? Isn't it weird that the PBC is still going to bat for Ortiz? Wouldn't you think they'd be furious with him after they signed him for a contract? Then he fails to disclose medicine and has to he spiked an event. There was a lot of excitement about the Wilder Ortiz fight, and he fucking ruined it. Wouldn't you think they'd be so upset with him? In theory?
Let's kind of look. In theory, you would think, but this is also the same organization that doesn't seem to be upset at Adrian Broner, who has arrest warrants out for him for assault. So when you look at it from that aspect, yeah, I mean Deontay Wilder got in trouble for I think some weed earlier this year. So I mean you just see them raking him through the coals for that. So I mean it's one of those things to where I think if it's one of those things, there's no harm, no foul. They were still able to give away tickets for Deontay Wilder's last fight, make it look like a packed house. It's still aired on TV. So it was all the same for them. I think it wouldn't have mattered who was in the ring with Deontay. It was because they were happy with the way it ended for Deontay, that he was able to get a win against a cosmetic crowd, if you will. So, I mean, it balances out, and you never know. They may now try to build Ortiz into being a top contender before he faces Wilder. It's extremely weird, that whole PBC dynamic. Now, I'm going to kind of delve into something I didn't touch on a lot last week when I had Omar Figueroa on. He said he had talked to Al, and Al, takes care of his people and what have you. I was like, Al just seems like a unicorn. Does he just seem to pop up like when you least expect him? And Omar said yes. That scared me. Your advisor, your promoter should never be looked upon as being a unicorn.
What did you mean by that when you said that? 'Cause that's really interesting.
Because he said, well, I told him like a unicorn because we never see him. We don't know if he actually exists, if he's real. And he said, you'll just get a phone call from him, letting you know what's going on, seeing if you need anything, and he'll make sure you're taken care of, make sure that you know that you're going to get a fight down the line. Just get yourself ready, start getting yourself prepared. But yeah, I was like, but we never see him. We don't even know if he really exists. We just don't know. He's like a unicorn. He's like a mythical creature. And Omar had to he laughed at that a little bit, but it's one of those things to where you just kind of wonder with PBC, like, what is he telling these guys to keep them so in line and so happy, with the exception of Vons Monterosa, who left for Don King. That was smart.
Well, I mean, we certainly, reading between the lines, like we certainly are aware that some fighters are no longer 100% content. That doesn't mean they've left, but you know, the Charlos were very unhappy with the way they were being treated, especially with how Erickson Lubin was being groomed, they felt, and you know, like their time was being run over essentially in favor of other people.
Fixed that shit.
Yeah, they did.
That real quick.
Well, they did. And then, you know, you see, you know, J-Rock definitely wanted to be more active. Austin Trout was talking about he didn't understand why he was so inactive. So you're seeing it more and more. I'm not saying you're going to see a massive exodus yet, but if you think about it, you know, next year we don't know how this is all going to play out. You know, we've heard that UFC is going to get into boxing. There's all sorts of rumors that that's where Al Heyman's going to land, some joint, you know, PBC UFC thing. Who the hell knows? All I know is he has 160 fighters, 170 fighters. He has Showtime now, and he has FS1, and those are not enough dates for the number of fighters that he has. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know if other networks are going to play. There are a couple of fights on Fox a year, so let's say that. But, I mean, you do the math. You have, let's say you have 15 to 20 live shows on Showtime. I mean, you do the math. There are not enough spots now. There aren't. So I expect things to change a little bit. I expect there'll be probably some either large reorganizations with PBC aligning with another entity, or we're going to see some form of retraction. So I think 2018, especially towards the end of the year, we're going to know a lot more about the long-term health because the status quo won't hold. They're just he's going to promise, you know, next year. I mean, even when you listen to Earl Spence's comments about he was promised he's going to fight 3 times in 2018. I mean, I think, you know, you read between the lines there, he's not happy that he only fought once in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and he's one of the golden boys of the company. At least he should be. And so it has to change. I don't know how it's going to change, but I know it's just you're going to see more and more fighters that they know you cannot be fighting once a year. You can't be as good as a fighter as you want to be fighting once a year. You can't make the money fighting once a year. It's going to change. It has to. So who knows? It is interesting. It's intriguing. A year ago, did we think Bob Arum and Top Rank would have this huge investment with ESPN and they'd be no longer with HBO after Top Rank had been with HBO off pretty much for 20-some years? I mean, that's the way these things are changing. Media companies are buying each other up. We still don't know if the HBO deal and the AT&T deal will go through. That got held up by the government, the Trump administration, going to sue to block that.
FCC.
And we just don't know how. We just don't know how these big shifting winds of the media landscape will be changing. But all we know is that it will. So I expect 2018 to have a number of highlights, number of paradigm shifts, just like 2017 did.
Well, one thing we are going to get in 2018 is a second installment of Superfly. See how I segue into that?
Yep.
Superfly 1 was fantastic. I agreed. It lived up to what we thought it was going to be. American fans embraced the smaller weight classes, and we enjoyed it, watched it, and wanted more. Well, guess what? You're going to get more. Here on February 24th, live on HBO from Inglewood, California, if I can talk. I think it's going to be the Forum out there in L.A. Sensor Say
Rungvisai, Sriskatat Sor Rungvisai against Juan Estrada. Great fight.
Okay, that's why we keep you around, Adam. We just call him SSR for short.
Yep.
He's going to be defending his WBC super flyweight title. Both these gentlemen are part of the first Superfly card for SSR. He avenged a majority win over Chocolito. The people thought Chocolito didn't have to win. Not so much. He went out and knocked him out and pretty much said, nope, I'm the number one guy now. How do you see early on with this fight being made, that being the main event there for Superfly 2, What are your initial thoughts of this matchup?
It's a great fight. Estrada, I thought had he had a very tough fight with Carlos Cuadras, which he squeaked by with a win. I think he won by 114, 113, I think, all 3 cards. And I think he won by 1 point, or 115, 113. I don't remember if there was a knockdown. It was like that. 1 round was the difference. And Estrada is really, really talented. SSR, he just comes at you like a motherfucker. There's another way to do it. I mean, Gonzalez. Yeah, I mean, Gonzalez was thought of Roman as this amazing pressure fighter, and he is. And it's like he landed some enormous shots on Srisaket, and Srisaket took him somehow. I mean, he was hurt. Srisaket was hurt in that fight, especially in the 12th round in the first fight. But Srisaket floors Gonzalez in the first fight. I mean, he fucks him up in the second fight. I mean, he keeps coming, and he's beatable. Let's not say I have him as a top fighter right now, because when you beat the top fighter and then you knock him out, you're a top fighter. But I also have Estrada as a top fighter. So you have 2 guys here that are easily in the top 12 of the sport, from my opinion. Estrada is 28. I didn't love the way his legs looked last fight. Maybe they'll be better. Maybe he's already on the downslope. I don't know fully. He's had a lot of injuries over the years. In theory, if he's right, he has the type of in-and-out movement. He can box and punch. He has the type of variety that I think could give Srisaket a lot of trouble. The issue that we've seen with Estrada is that he does not always fight 12 rounds. He can be a slow starter. That is a very bad recipe against Srisaket. You want to be a fast starter and somehow try and win on the cards. If you want to try and stage a comeback against that guy, best of luck. I love the fight. I love it. Gun to my head at this moment, I think Estrada somehow finds a way. But, I say that with little confidence. I love this fight. So I think Cuadras is also going to be on the undercard, and I'm also hearing the Japanese superstar Naoya Inoue is going to be on the card as well. Unfortunately, there are 2 fighters in particular that have turned down opportunities to be on the card. Kalia Fai, who is a champion at 115 pounds in England, he has turned down a fight from Inoue. Eddie Hearn confirmed that this week. He didn't like the money. And Jerwin Nkejas, who we've seen a couple of times. He was on the Manny Pacquiao card against Jeff Horn earlier this year and looked great. He also just knocked out Conlan's brother, Jamie Conlan, a couple weeks ago in England and looked great. He also turned down an opportunity to be on that card because he is going to be signing with Top Rank. So Top Rank, it's not like they won't do business with any of those guys, but Top Rank wants to put Nkejas on on ESPN. So he's not going to be on that HBO card. It's a good move, I think, for Nkejas' career. He needs to make money. The highest purse he's ever made prior to today is $80,000. So you can understand why. If Top Rank's going to guarantee him a couple $100,000 a fight for a 3 or 4 fight deal, you got to take the money, right? You got to take that. But for us fight fans, he's a really good fighter, Nkejas. So we'll see who the opponents are. It's a very deep division. I do expect we'll get a couple more fun fights there. And I love how HBO is bringing back Carlos Cuadras now after a couple of losses. He's still fun, and I love that they're not necessarily shitting on a guy who loses. It's like kind of more like the older days. Like, hey, this guy's fun. Let's bring him back. It's a good recipe. So that's how I see it. How do you like?
Yeah, I was going to say they're doing that similar with Cletus Selden here in a couple of weeks. So, HBO's trying. They're trying, and I mean, we gotta take the good with the bad regards to that. But as far as Superfly 2 goes, one thing that I like about it, that especially from my eyes, it gives us an opportunity to see some of these smaller weight classes that don't get the push that you don't see on major network television. They get that first introduction to everyone. Our international fighters who you may have never heard of before, they get that introduction to the platform of American fans because people in boxing look at it like this. Maybe let me rephrase that. Us American boxing fans look at it like this. If you're not fighting in America, you're not doing something right. Like, who are you? We don't know who you are. Right. So when they get this opportunity, I'm glad to see that they're bringing in different guys. You know, we're not getting a completely, you know, recycled batch of guys like we had from the first Superfly. We're going to get some new faces, some familiar faces, some champions. So it's good. It's a good blend. I believe the matchmaking is going to do well on this. So I'm looking forward to this in February. I was going to just point out, you know, we've said all this year the boxing gods have blessed us in 2017. 2018 looks like it's going to be, you know, kind of similar, at least on paper. Earl Spence, Lamont Peterson in January. Lucas Matisse makes his return. Jorge Linares makes his return. That's in January. You have the World Boxing Super Series that will start back up also in January. We now have Superfly 2 that's now been booked. Gilberto Ramirez, he'll be defending his super middleweight championship in February. So early on, we're kind of getting some names out there. We're seeing some interesting fights and fighters that are going to be a part of the first quarter of 2018. So when Superfly is announced, that just adds to it, adds to that excitement.
I think we have one great fight left in 2017, and unfortunately I'm going to be away for it, and I love this fight. And you don't mind if we talk about it real fast because I want a chance to talk about it. But I love this Billy Joe Saunders fight. That's on December 16th. That's a week from Saturday night on HBO. That's the fight card that Cletus Seldon is going to be on that you were mentioning. That is a great fight. That is a wonderful style matchup. It's going to have drama with Saunders leaving England, coming to Lemieux's hometown or home province in Quebec. It is puncher of Lemieux versus a pretty crafty boxer when he's on in Billy Joe Saunders. Lemieux is one of the best left hooks in the sport. He has flaws. We've seen him get beat before. You know, he is very susceptible against fighters with good jabs, which Saunders has. I love this fight. I love it. I mean, I think all boxing fans know it's a good fight, too. It's just neither of them are really stars here. If Saunders was such a star, it would be in England and not Quebec. But it's a good fight. I mean, what do you see about the fight? I mean, are you interested in it? Let me start with you there.
I'm excited about it, but I'm not putting a ton of faith into it until we get like 2 days before the fight. I want to make sure Billy Joe Saunders doesn't pull out. So that's my thing. That's my biggest fear with him because we've unfortunately seen this with him before with fights, injuries until they got to fight. Otherwise than that, as long as the fight happens, it's going to be fun while it lasts. Let make no mistake about it. We've seen Lemieux. He's a great fast starter, but if you get him into that back half of that fight, he starts slowing down because he puts so much energy in those punches early on to where if Billy Joe Saunders can weather that early storm, you know, he should have an easy back half of the fight because Lemieux just won't have the power and the output that he has in the beginning part of the fight. That's what makes it interesting to me is can Saunders, weather that early storm? Can he absorb the power punches? How will he react to them? Because I think it's going to be all Lemieux offense early, and then it's going to be Billy Joe Saunders. If he weathers that, it's going to be him boxing his way to a victory the second half of the fight.
See, I like it because we finally see a fight differently. Because for whatever reason, like we see 80% of these fights we see very similarly. So when the future World Boxing Super Series winner Chris Eubank Jr. And I'm telling you, I'm completely on board the Eubank train. I don't know if you're there yet. I'm 100% on board. So
I'm there.
Okay.
I'm there.
So when he fought Saunders completely outclassed Eubank early, and then Eubank came on late. When Saunders fought Andy Lee, Saunders actually knocked Andy Lee down twice, which is stunning, and then faded late. Even the last fight against Monroe, I thought Saunders didn't look good late. So I hear what you're saying about Lemieux fading, but Saunders fades too. So that's why I think it's a really interesting fight because neither of these guys is at their best, come rounds 10, 11, or 12. That's why I think there's going to be a knockout on this fight. I think it's going to be Lemieux doing it, but it could also be, I've seen Lemieux get knocked out or stopped by Golovkin. He certainly got knocked out or stopped on his feet earlier in his career as well against Rubio. And Rubio's not a huge puncher. He just, as you were saying, Lemieux gassed. So I think his training's much better now. He's with Mark Ramsey, who I think has done a nice job with him. But I think there's going to be a knockout later in this fight because one or not both of them are going to be gassed in this fight. One or not both of them is not going to be in great shape. One or not both of them cannot go 12 hard rounds in a championship fight. So I'm really looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I have to tape it. I will actually go with Lemieux by like a 9th round knockout because I see what you're saying, but I think Saunders really fades too. I also think like Saunders is one of these guys, like he's at middleweight because he fought at 168 because his style is not good enough for it. Like he doesn't have enough natural power, but he's probably outgrown 160 really. So I think he's not, I just haven't seen him in deep enough to put my faith in him. I'm going to go with Lemieux by like an 8th or 9th round KO.
Yeah, I like Lemieux via the knockout, but it's going to be fun. Like you said, it's going to cap off a great year that we've had here in boxing. And also, we'd be remiss if we didn't also mention that this weekend as well, that you can watch on Showtime's Facebook page and YouTube channel, James DeGale versus Caleb Truax. Lee Selby will also be in action, both defending their IBF titles in their respective weight classes. DeGale's first fight since his controversial fight with Badu Jack, which was a hell of a great fight. I enjoyed that. I think that really helped earn a lot of respect for Badu Jack and really start the momentum in the train he's on. So shout out to James DeGale. Let's see how he looks, how he bounces back. See if he's still good here at the weight at 168. We've had some issues with that, but I'm interested to see how he looks as well. So, and shout out to Showtime for putting that on YouTube and on their Facebook channel.
On this card that are going to be streamed as well that are among the 2 best prospects, and I think one in particular you're going to love. So, Anthony Yard is a light heavyweight fighter who is Frank Warren is betting the future of his company. Like he's already like the insignia guy. Anthony Yard is a hard-punching, like aggressive light heavyweight. I've seen him 2 or 3 fights. The guy is good. We don't know how good yet, but I'm telling you, he's going to be on this card. I'm really excited that some American fans are going to get some exposure to him. The other one is a heavyweight, Daniel Dubois. Or if he's a French pronunciation, Dubois. I forget if it's Dubois or Dubois, but anyway, give me a little slack here. I have seen him fight a couple of times. He's a heavyweight. He is raw, but he apparently has sparred all of the top guys as an amateur. His power is real. So I think he's only about 4-0 or 5-0. Yard may be further along. I think Yard's like 10 or 11-0. But both of these guys are on these are not like Shakur Stevenson 4-0, 5-0 fighters, Brandon. Like where Shakur's like, okay, he needs 2 or 3 more years. Like Anthony Yard may be by the end of next year ready to like sniff a title. Or really early in 2019. Like, he's a real fast mover. And I think Dubois is going to be a fast mover as well. So I guarantee all the listeners out there, I know we have some British fans that are going to be all over these fights, but for the American fans, if you can, watch these 2 guys. And also, Selby's fine. Whatever. He's probably going to be in a big fight next year, so it'll be interesting to see how he looks. DeGale is a very flashy fighter. He should look good against Caleb Truax. I mean, I like Caleb. He's on Twitter. We're friends on Twitter, but he's not in the same class as DeGale. I mean, he's going to have to literally like luck into something. So thanks for bringing that up. I'm glad this is another thing that Showtime's doing to help boxing fans get a fuller picture of what's going on out there in the boxing world. And I think you're really going to like Yard, and I think you're really going to like the boys.
Agreed. Good weekend of fight action. Now, I would be remiss as well if I didn't give a quick plug. Friday night, I will be actually covering women's mixed martial arts. Anyone who knows I love watching women's mixed martial arts. I like watching mixed martial arts as a whole. Granted, the UFC product is kind of soured on me. I'll get on that soapbox another day. But Friday night, I'll be live covering Invicta FC 26. You can watch that live on UFC Fight Pass. Pretty good chance you'll see me on TV sitting on press row. You'll see the handsome African-American gentleman. I don't know what I'll be wearing, but I'll be wearing something fancy. That's what I do. But I want to give a special shout-out to Invicta FC. And all my listeners, if you're not a part of UFC Fight Pass, you get it free for like 7-day trial. Watch the women fight. They always put on a tremendous fight show. They're all-women card. They do a great job. Shout out to Shannon Knapp, who's going to be doing boxing next year. She's going to get in the boxing promotion game. I don't know how that's going to work. I'll have her on the show to explain that at some juncture once that gets done. But I want to give a quick plug to Invicta FC and all the female athletes who are part of that. They do a hell of a job. Can't wait to see them throw down come Friday night.
Cool.
Now,
let me also give.
I was going to say we do have one caller in queue, but what you got, Adam?
Let's do it. No, let's hit the caller.
All right, caller from the 718. You're live here on Punch in the Face Radio.
Hello, caller.
You're live here on Punch in the Face Radio.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, you're on, man. What's up?
Hey, what's going on, man? Just wanted to get your thoughts on two things. One, Errol Spence, and wanted to know if Spence was to leave Heyman hypothetically, right, and was to go with, let's say, Matchroom or Golden Boy, say he goes to Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. I'm seeing a lot of people on the internet, say he should go there, but if he goes there, he said he wants to stay at 147. He's not ready to move up to 154. So if he goes there, what fights are there for him at 147 while he's with Matchroom? Everybody, all the top guys at 147 are with Heyman. So how does those fights get made?
Well, there's one fighter who's out with Al Heyman who is now making his introductory to 147. Now, we may get it sooner than we would want if Spence were to go that direction, but him and Terrence Crawford, the fight could get made a lot easier that way if Spence isn't with Al Heyman because, Top Rank has had issues with Heyman. If, he were to part ways, go to Matchroom, go to Golden Boy, the fight could get made. It could get made relatively easy. That would be his biggest option, but you still have guys like Kell Brook. You still have guys like Amir Khan who's also double-dipping and paying Golden Boy and Al Heyman. Don't ask me how that works, but he's still a Golden Boy fighter, folks. A lot of people don't realize that. So, that's also an option. That would be a name on his resume because, let's face it, he doesn't have a lot of names on his resume. So those would be his immediate options. There would be some other guys who may move up from 140 who are, maybe fringe guys who could move up and be challengers for him. But at the end of the day, the champions are all, unfortunately, underneath one umbrella. But the Terrence Crawford fight would be the biggest fight that would be able to be made for him, period, at that juncture.
Right.
Caller, what's your name?
Mark.
Oh, Mark. Thanks for calling in. I don't think Earl Spence is leaving PBC. Now, I was certainly surprised when Danny Jacobs left. I didn't think he was leaving either. But I think they know there are a lot of fights for Earl Spence right there. There are a lot of fights for him. You have Keith Thurman. You have Sean Porter. You have all the guys at 154 if he chooses to move up. Like, the fights are there. I think they know his star potential. I think they didn't have a lot of fights for Dane Jacobs at 160, and that was one of the reasons why they kind of let him go. I see Earl Spence kind of as one of the faces of the PBC and what Heyman's trying to build. I just don't see him going. I could be wrong. It happens. I think he stays put.
I agree. Yeah.
It's interesting to think about. But Brandon, do you think he goes though? I think he stays. Don't you?
I think what's going to happen is his dad's going to step in like he did when he came out the Olympics. His dad's going to step in like he did this year, and he's going to look at the short-term money that Al Heyman's going to be able to offer him and say, you know what? Let's get this bag. Let's get this $3.5 million to fight a guy like Peterson, like he's getting here in a couple of months, and now look at the opportunity of longevity and legacy, and just get that bag and get that short-term money. So Unfortunately, Spence has people in his ears who are more controlling of the business side of it than he is, that are going to point him and push him towards the direction of short-term money and not bigger picture of legacy.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, Mark. You had another point?
I just think if Spence, were to leave and he were to go to Matchroom and fight on HBO, I would love to see it, but I don't think the fights are there, for the long term. And the Crawford fight, if they were, the Crawford fight isn't a fight that can be made right now. It needs to marinate. That's just what it is. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I agree. Thank you very much for calling in. Really appreciate it, Mark.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right. What?
Yeah, I was going to say one quick thing before I forget here. The Punch to the Face radio poll this week was who's going to have the best performance of the weekend. The options were Lomachenko, Rigondeaux, Orlando Salido, or Tevin Farmer. Kind of interesting, but not surprising who won. Orlando Salido with 7% of the votes. Tevin Farmer got 8% of the votes. Kind of surprised he actually had more than Salido, truth be told. Rigondeaux at 22%, and then with an overwhelming 63%, the fans say Lomachenko is going to put on a masterful performance this weekend.
So I got two more things. One is we should say congratulations to the International Boxing Hall of Fame inductees.
Yes.
Eric Morales, Vitaly Klitschko, and in a surprise, Ronald Winky Wright, on his first ballot, gets in over Ricky Hatton. I posted a poll which had over 500 people voting who had the better career, and Ricky Hatton won. But I put the same poll up in my Facebook group, SN Boxing, by the way, and most people thought that Winky Wright had the better career. I think it's really the eye of the beholder. I was a little surprised. I liked Ricky Hatton. I thought he was fun, but I really liked Winky Wright, and I always felt like he was shafted a lot in his career. He was an excellent fighter who didn't always get the opportunities. One could make that these are popularity contests anyway. If somebody wants to tell me that Vitaly Klitschko and Winky Wright are not first ballot Hall of Famers and that there are other deserving fighters out there, I'm fine with that. I'm not even going to make that argument. That's completely correct. That's correct. The Donald Currys of the world, the Nigel Benns, the Chris Eubanks Seniors. You got so many fighters that sometimes can't even get on the ballot, let alone aren't even in yet. So congratulations. I don't want to shit on them. Winky Wright, I thought, everybody will talk about his wins over Mosley, but the masterful performance for me was beating Trinidad.
Can you say that louder so I can make sure I play this for Michelle Rosario?
That's right. You should just tweet her right now. The thing is this, it's one thing when Bernard Hopkins, Hopkins was a big, full-fledged middleweight. He intimidated him. I get that, right? We get that. Winky Wright just stood right in front of him, right, with his gloves up, and just out-jabbed him. And, Trinidad had no idea what to do. I mean, he literally stood right in front of him and just beat him. He didn't move. I mean, Winky Wright's legs are almost in cement in that fight, and he dominated. It was fantastic. And it was a big upset. People forget, but Trinidad was the favorite still, and the real boxing fans knew Winky Wright was going to win. But, I mean, I don't know if you remember that fight, but that was just so surprising to me. I thought Wright was going to win, but I didn't think he was going to win like that. I mean, I thought he would just box and move a little bit more, turn out his moments. He just stood right there in the pocket and just kept his gloves up, just out-jabbed him, right jab, left hand, throwing a little bit of right hook. He just did it. He just stayed right there and beat him.
Now, personally, I always thought Felix Trinidad was overrated. I've said it before, and I will continue to say it. So I wasn't overly shocked by that, but it was one of those things to where after his wins against Shane Mosley, I'm thinking, okay, who can beat this guy? I honestly thought Trinidad was going to put up a tougher fight, but Winky Wright just showed there's levels in boxing, and he showed that night. He showed that he's at a different level. Unfortunately, he ended his career with 3 straight L's, but I don't think people are going to remember that. They're going to remember those wins against Trinidad, Mosley. He fought a game fight against Jermaine Taylor that I thought he won, but, he hell of a career.
You know what? Their careers didn't really overlap, but if you want to talk about a type of fighter who Floyd Mayweather could have struggled with, think about Winky Wright at 154 pounds. Because you can't land on him easily. Mayweather would have to really fight like in and out. Winky's not going anywhere. Winky was a really physical 154 guy too. I mean, maybe Floyd wins that foot speed, kind of like stinking out the fight a little bit. But, that's a really tough style for him. So that would have been one of those, the fight never happened. It never was going to happen. I'm not saying it should have happened. It just, if you're talking about, I always thought that, like, Winky Wright had a tough style for Mayweather. Vern Forrest at 154 had a really tough style for Mayweather. Those were interesting types of fights. It didn't happen, but those are, I'm a boxing dork, so I sit at home and think about these things every now and then. It's like, whatever, these things happen. So anyway, I also got to talk about Morales. Morales was one of my favorite fighters, and I even appreciated him more as he got older and less talented. I loved his first fight against Pacquiao. That was so amazing, the way he took a guy who was faster, far more athletic, and beat him at his own game in some sense. Morales showed that he could fight, he could box, he was smart. He had those great fights with Barrera, Junior Jones. He defeated. He was a tough hombre, but he was a smart boxer. He could box, and I liked him. Now, he didn't always take care of himself out of the ring. His training wasn't always 100%, but he was a fucking badass. And what he gave. The one time I didn't like him is when they had the Pacquiao rematch lined up, and he got defeated by the guy from Philadelphia. Who I'm talking about. The lefty that was supposed to be the Zahir Rahim, yeah. And I think Morales just took the guy off as a joke. And that was one of the few times where I think Top Rank got burned too. I don't think they did their homework. But, for everything else, I mean, even going to the Madonna fight at the end of his career, when everybody thought that Morales should be taking this fight, it's bad for his health. And then what did Morales do? He won 4 or 5 rounds and looked great. Not great, but he showed that he was a warrior. Morales gave a lot of memorable, fun nights of boxing to fans. He had that incredible trilogy with Barrera. He had the first 2 Pacquiao fights were excellent. He just provided a lot of wonderful moments. I'm not going to cry. It's not like Cotto for me, but I really respected the dude a lot.
Absolutely. He came around at a time when I started, where I was completely out of love with boxing. And I got to give a shout out to one of my best friends, God bless his soul, Jay Sanders, who he's like, yo, you got to watch this guy, Manny Pacquiao. And I was like, who's he fighting? And I heard of Eric Morales before that. So I was like, he's fighting Morales? Morales and saw the fighter. And, it was the second fight of theirs. And he's like, yo, you never saw the first one? So shout out to the internet to where I was able to get caught up on these kind of things when I'd fallen out of love with boxing. And he was one of the guys, him and his fist fights with Manny Pacquiao, helped me gain my love and appreciation again for the sweet science. So shout out to him, and also shout out to Klitschko. He took time away. He was hurt, came back, became champion again. We'll never forget how he went. He almost sent Lennox Lewis to hell, but his eye did not hold up that night. Lennox was like, I'm good. No more of this after that. So,
right. No, you're right. And
hell of a fighter.
The shame of it is that was shaping up to be one of the truly, that was a really good heavyweight fight. That was a really good heavyweight fight. And you remember, and we saw that a little bit with Joshua Klitschko, that, that heavyweights used to actually throw punches too, and they used to bang and brawl and do all the stuff that people from other weight classes did. Somebody explained it to me really well, a fat, out of shape Lennox Lewis was coming back on Klitschko and was about to end him. So I liked Klitschko. I liked Vitaly. He was a little more aggressive than his brother. he wasn't as skilled as his brother, but I think he had more of a fighting temperament. We didn't really get to see him there. He didn't have too many top contenders. Top fight, frankly, the heavyweight division was awful for most of his career, and he also was hurt a lot, and some fights fell out. But he obviously was a talent. He obviously was formidable, and congratulations to his career. There's other people like Jim Gray that got nominated to the Hall of Fame. Steve Albert got elected to the Hall of Fame. Former Showtime announcers. Jim Gray is, of course, still there. We'll just move on.
Jim Gray, he gives no shit about your villains. I love. I find it annoying. There was a great joke on Twitter where someone was like, "If you want to congratulate Jim Gray for getting into the Hall of Fame, make sure you say so in English." Because he is so nasty when he's interviewing, Hispanic fighters. Can you please say English? I'm like, what a fucking asshole. He is sometimes, Sometimes he's good too. I also want to make just I know we're about to wrap up, I want to make a quick plug for, I am going to have a much longer preview article for Lomachenko Rigondeaux, keys to the fight, 5 or 6 things I'm going to be looking for. I also will be reiterating my prediction, but those people, and I know there are a lot of them that are really interested in to dissect this fight. I'm going to get into that. That's going to be up tomorrow night. And then, as usual, you can follow me on SN Boxing on Twitter, and then I have the Facebook boxing group SN Boxing. So, as always, Brandon, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. No worries, my brother. No worries. Now, when you return here back to us, whether it's the end of this year or the top of next year, we'll be naming and giving some awards away. We'll also be talking about some things we want to see in 2018. We don't know what kind of show, what we're going to name the show yet. We'll figure that out closer to time, but that's something I'm definitely looking forward to, because there's a lot of things we need to see in 2018 that we will definitely dissect and give a little bit more detail as to why we need to see those in 2018.
And you know what?
Go ahead.
We don't have to do all good awards too. We could do good and bad awards. Yeah, I mean, I think Okay, good. Well, I think we're going to need, just so we're a little prepared, we'll send out, we'll email each other, here's some fun awards, here's some funny awards, like worst training performance of the year, or worst, sound, but also some good stuff too. It doesn't always have to be just fight of the year, round of the year. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff, so we'll have fun. Yeah. I mean, I'll do it. But we have the opportunity to have some fun with it too. So, as always, have fun with it. Yeah. Well, have a great holiday season. I'll be returning, late December, early January. Thank you for having me on this year, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you always rocking with me. Shout out to the callers calling in tonight. Everyone enjoy boxing here this weekend, or MMA if you're into that as well. As I will be doing here on Friday. My voice held up a hell of a lot better than I thought it would. I did have to mute myself a lot while you were talking, coughing, so it worked out fine this week. So thank you for everyone who listened to my raspy voice, and hopefully I don't puke here afterwards. So we're looking at the positive. Things are picking up. With that being stated, as I say after every show, I want everyone to stay safe, stay blessed, love one another, because it's the only way we're going to get through this. Enjoy the fights, people, and definitely interact with me and Adam throughout the fight weekend. Let us know your thoughts about what you see, and we'll give our takes on it. Until next week, I'll be back with Lord knows what next week's show will be about, but obviously we'll recap this weekend's fights. Until then, this is Brandon Stubbs, and I am out.
Napa know-how.
The Napa guy knows not to judge a man by his car's multicolored paint job or absence of modern gadgetry. Who cares if it's technically old enough to vote and the windows are powered by the strength of your left arm? Your monthly payment is zero, and it'll stay that way. Because with over 500,000 parts and a little Napa know-how, you can keep anything on the road. She may not be pretty, but she's all yours. That's Napa Know-How.
Napa Know-How.
Do you suffer from chronic CFED or can't focus energy drain? Try over-the-counter Vibrant. One tablet contains the same caffeine as a cup of coffee, but without the calories or coffee breath. Vibrant. Caffeine, not coffee. Taking Vibrant may result in increased productivity and decreased dread in setting alarms. Unexpected enjoyment of the graveyard shift has been associated with Vibrant. Vibrant may be a better budget option than drinking coffee. It may also decrease the urge to doze off, skip work, or exhibit signs of slacking. All jokes aside, always read the label, take only as directed, and limit caffeine as it may cause real side effects. Not for children under age 12.